Hey everybody, it's me, Will Karen. I guess I'm in a bit of a chef arc right now, and I'm a pretty curious lad. I have a big imagination and the kind desire to learn more about other countries and their cuisine, and also the crippling socioeconomic state of the world right now. I simply have to cook something. What are we cooking today? On this wheel, there is every country. Spin the wheel of countries. We're cooking food from Liechtenstein. Today, we are going to cook Ribble. Ribble is a cheap and filling food historically eaten by agricultural workers and the working class in general. Sweet like you, or salty like the sea. It's essentially just toasted cornmeal. And hey, I'm going to prepare mine with some homemade applesauce and cinnamon sugar. That sounds pretty good. But first we got to talk about the belle of the ball, the birthday girl herself, Liechtenstein. Look at this tiny little country. It's the fourth smallest country in Europe, and it borders Switzerland and Austria. You would think that it's a cute little bugger if you didn't know about all the shitty stuff. Well, I guess shitty is subjective. Shitty if you enjoy democracy and dislike corporate freedom. This country is considered a billionaire tax haven, an offshore financial paradise for corporations and the ultra-wealthy to hoard their wealth more efficiently. Hey, that's fucking shitty. The story of Ribble is a story of economic hardship, which is not representative of Liechtenstein right now. Today, Liechtenstein is, per capita, if I'm not mistaken, depending on the dataset you're looking at, the wealthiest country in the world. And it's just a micro-state. And to the folks who think they know me, I did not actually behind the scenes pick this country. This was genuinely what the wheel landed on. This country used to be teeming with agricultural workers who were by no means wealthy. They would have to eat this, Ribble, which, let's call it like it is, toasted corn porridge, sometimes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In this new spin the wheel cooking show that I'm doing, I always want to focus on the working class people of whichever country, their food, history, and labor issues. That's gonna be a bit of an issue for this country. With such a rich pre-modern working class history, you would imagine that there would be a compelling list of progressive politics and fights for labor rights, but the left in this country was snuffed out before it could even breathe. For the most part, citizens don't have to worry too much about labor rights because today the Liechtenstein workforce is mainly composed of foreign workers. These foreign workers can't vote. They can't live in this country without a permit, but this country is structurally dependent on them. They make up the economic backbone of the entire country. And by the way, that is not normal. The average European country has a workforce made up of primarily citizens. Let me grab my apron. The Liechtenstein economy was beyond fucked up after World War II, so they decided to dramatically ease up on taxes. After post-World War II reconstruction and expansive industrialization efforts, this country started to generate some serious wealth and attract some filthy rich tax dodgers. The tax policy extended to both people and corporations, which, according to corporate personhood philosophy and laws, are also considered people. Liechtenstein also has laws that enshrine privacy in business affairs for offshore accounts. There's so much secrecy in this legal system, it's kind of crazy. The royal family of Liechtenstein has a bank, the LGT Group, and these fuckers were caught red-handed with one of the most cartoonishly corrupt tax evasion scandals in European history. In the aughts, a bunch of Germans took advantage of Liechtenstein's trust laws that seemed perfectly manufactured to aid tax evaders. A bonkers amount of German tax revenue was skirted by doing this. Hundreds of millions of euros were filtered through this banking system, which prompted a bank employee to sell client information to the German government for 7.3 million USD. Not out of the goodness of their heart. What are you, crazy? The royal family had to pony up about 50 million euros to the German treasury in 2008. Here's another thing about the royal family. The Prince of Liechtenstein has a bananas amount of monarchical power. A lot of people say that the British royal family is just a tourist attraction at this point. Well, the Prince of Liechtenstein pretty much owns the entire state. The prince can veto any piece of legislation, dismiss government officials, and even rule the country if he isn't really vibing with the way the elected government is doing things. They are also way behind the times on social issues. Liechtenstein is the very last European country to adopt women's suffrage, doing so in 1984. Freedom of speech is also an issue over there. The prince wrote a letter to a politician saying that he would never be appointed again because the politician suggested that elected officials should have ultimate constitutional authority. You know, like how democracies work. Yeah, the European Court of Human Rights didn't really like that. The royal family's bank reported about $330 billion in assets managed. The prince, however, has about $10 billion in personal wealth. And funny enough, in efforts to preserve the royal family's power, the family has deployed populist language to smear elected officials, calling them oligarchs, which is a term that loses all meaning when a literal billionaire royal levies it as a genuine insult. You might be saying that this country sounds like an anarcho-capitalist nightmare community ruled by a monarchy. Well, you'd be kinda right to say that. Prince Hans Adam II is a libertarian philosopher. He wrote a hyper-libertarian book called The State and the Third Millennium, where he proposes the redefinition of government as a private enterprise, a customer and business transactional relationship instead of one where the government serves its citizens. Hans Adams II is also friends with Hans Hermann Hoppe, who is an anarcho-capitalist architect and wrote a book called Democracy, the God That Failed, where he advocates for, you guessed it, abolishing democracy and also for privately owned communities where laws and social order is directly established and governed by people who own the capital, and those very people can and should exclude whoever they want from their societies, such as proponents of democracy, and exclude even on the basis of race, sexual orientation, and cultural identity. In other words, to remove the undesirables, however they're defined by the rulers of each society. Okay, this might be shocking information for you to hear, but neo-Nazis really like this guy. He even got Richard B. Spencer to speak at a conference his organization held. Fun fact, this is the same event that Peter Thiel spoke at. So it makes sense that an architect of anarcho-capitalism philosophy is obsessed with the tax-hating privately owned country where the workforce is primarily made up of non-citizens. The royal family is the business owner and the state of Liechtenstein is the business itself. The state is kind of the playbook. This is more or less what folks like Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin envision for a model to work towards. A template for neo-feudalism, a dark enlightenment, a return to a monarchical order, the only difference being here that it doesn't necessarily have to be a prince or a king in control, it could be a CEO or an investor. But Karen, the people democratically voted for the monarchy to have this constitutional power. The people like the way things are being run. So here's the thing about that. Again, the workforce is largely made up of non-citizens and they don't get any say in the constitutional makeup of the country. There's also many layers of coercion at play. The prince threatened to relocate if he didn't get his way, which would have essentially fucking tanked the economy of this micro country and destroyed many people's lives. But the most important point here is that most of the citizens are well positioned in the structural makeup of this ultra wealthy country that benefits from the labor of non-citizens. So it makes sense that they would want to preserve this system. It's kind of like how in a system like slavery, why slave owners, those who benefit from slavery, and even some poor non-slave owners who still could recognize that at least they weren't at the bottom of the social pecking order, would all vote for not abolishing slavery. I know that slavery is a dramatic example, and of course not a direct comparison, but the point here is that well-off citizens protecting the system might do so to preserve their position in a hierarchy. The modern history of this country really is a story of dramatic transformation. It's hard to believe that this food right here, which many would consider to be a struggle meal, is a classic Liechtenstein dish. The Ribble-eating agriculture worker of yesterday is now a nearly non-existent breed. It exists as a foundation of cornmeal for the luxury toppings, cinnamon and applesauce, because the applesauce... Okay, this analogy is dead in the water. I know it sounds like I'm shitting all over this place, but I promise I'm not coming after all of the people of this country or the pre-modern history of this nation. Shout out to Liechtensteinians who, are fans of democracy. You are the birthday cake, or I guess you are the Ribble with cinnamon sugar and applesauce. I also made off camera a savory version which has exactly what I cooked before but without sweet stuff and some black pepper, so I didn't film myself making this specifically. That would have been kind of boring. Yeah, so this is a very filling dish. It is, as you might guess, pretty dry, so if you do feel compelled to make it, maybe try it with some extra butter, a compote, a syrup, or really anything you can think of that adds a little bit of moisture. The savory version tastes like toasted cornmeal, so, you know, no surprise there. But the sweet version, which is what I suggest you make, tastes more like a polenta apple pie, if that makes sense. It's not complicated at all, and I'm sure if I used a more traditional type of cornmeal, it would be different, maybe even better, but I bet you can envision exactly what both of these dishes taste like. Well, that's about all I have planned. I need to eat this Ribble, but show me my patrons and have a wonderful day, everyone.